So I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to welcome Joe and Todd here. Thank you for coming.
Always fun to
and
be back.
providing this information. We have one board member who's going to be about 5 minutes late, but he'll just join us when he gets here. So I would like approval of the agenda. If somebody would make that motion.
So move. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And so I am going to turn it over to you and
Thanks.
listen to all the great information
right
you have to share with us.
Excellent. I think that's the last page.
And I think just for the board members in your folders, we have hard copies of many of the things that will be presented.
If I could just start, I left my hearing aids at home, so if people could speak up. I'd
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mark, for saying that.
Thanks for inviting us. This is always one of our most enjoyable parts of the process because we've had a chance to get in the district and talk to your folks and review surveys and put things together and come up with this leadership profile, which, as we've told you, guides the rest of the process. So it's a very positive meeting for us, and we're eager to share with you what we came up with. So first slide is just our reason for being here, and again, the goal was to get a great leadership profile to guide us. The other goal was for all of your folks to feel like they had some input here. You as a board are going to make decisions later down, but in our process, the input comes at the front end, and that's a really important part of the process.
And I will say that the groups that I met with were very complimentary, that the board had asked them to meet with us as consultants. I think the students were, as well as the union leadership. So that says a lot about the board and the inclusivity that you were after.
The first thing we can say with great confidence is that the results that we're going to share with you today and the conclusions that we make are we think very valid because we had just wonderful participation from your school community. 98 people talked to us personally in focus groups. As you can see on this slide, we spoke to your ad team, we spoke to principals and deans. We had 22 teachers representing the teaching staff, another 18 non-teaching support staff, 17 parents, and 18 really fun high school kids that Todd had a chance to meet with. That was a really nice turnout. We had some things here on site. We had other things available in Zoom, and people took advantage of both. 1,123 people responded to your survey, and just looking at that in isolation, you might think, is that good? Is that bad? What is it? I'll just give you a number as reference. In Green Bay, which has 20,000 kid district, you guys have what, 45? We only had 1,800 survey results in Green Bay. District your size had 1,123. That's just an excellent response. Breaking the trend of what lately in our current searches we've had trouble getting people to respond. So you obviously have a community that cares a great deal about the district and a community that wants to be involved and share their input. It was wonderful. We couldn't have asked for a better response. And then the last data source was all of you who were gracious enough to give us about a half hour of your time, and we did one-to-one interviews. So the data was solid, the sources and the numbers are all solid. I put this up just for a little bit of fun, but don't try to read it or analyze it. My whole reason for putting that up is to show you and to state publicly that we listened to and recorded every response that those 98 people made. So when we sat in those focus groups or we led a Zoom meeting, we had a pad of paper next to us and we were writing down, we listened, making no judgments, just being good listeners. And then what we're all about is synthesizing the data and looking for frequencies, the things that came up the most. So you could see, I'm rather old school, but I just started writing down and lumping things together, and that's kind of the way that when I'm about to show you some conclusions, those aren't just Todd and I deciding what we thought we heard. This is real research. This is real data. It's a combination qualitative and quantitative data, and we think that's the most powerful. So that's how we come to our conclusions. And we're going to break this report. Be patient with us because it's going to sound a little redundant, but we'd like to tell you what we learned in the 3 big questions when we met with focus groups. Then we want to separate that out, and then what we learned strictly from the surveys. And then we'll conclude with, all right, what did both of those tell us? What were the things that we could definitely conclude and put in the leadership profile? So this first set of strengths comes from the focus groups. Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing? Sorry
Great.
I'm late.
No problem. So these are pretty much in frequency order, but you shouldn't worry too much that this is the number 1, this is the number 2. Things were really close. But what we looked at were the things that really came up, had multiple people talking about it. And there were other positives, obviously, that people brought up, but maybe only 1 or 2 people maybe mentioned it. So what we looked for was, where did the cluster of multiple answers come from? And then you can kind of see where there's a drop-off. And that seems like a good place to draw the line. So the line kind of drew naturally after these 8. High student achievement, prepared for college and life. Reputation is very important to this community, and the reputation they feel comes from high expectations and that high achievement. A lot of pride that you have a balanced program. I guess the easiest way to say this is there's something for everyone in your district. There's all kinds of academic options with AP and everything else, but there's also fine arts and sports and extracurricular, and the people that we talk to love that about your program.
And you do hear a lot about the music and drama as well.
Yeah,
Many times you hear, oh, we like all the opportunities, they kind of gravitate to sports and clubs, but I had a number of people mention specifically drama.
People would even say, you probably are hearing a lot of that we like our sports, but I want to tell you, we also like this, and this. So that was kind of neat. A lot of people pointed out strong community support and engagement with you guys, and the real life proof of that is your referenda passing and the number of parents that are involved in your programs. Outstanding and dedicated staff. You know what was refreshing about this one? Usually that comes up. It's not unusual in these processes, but sometimes people just talk about the teachers, and the poor administrators never get their due. But your community really went out of their way to praise your administrators, and in many cases they praised you as a board as well. It was really refreshing. And your superintendent is just the most esteemed person in this school community, and I want him to hear that.
Is he here?
Yeah, so many.
He's hearing it.
So many people, when we ask the question, well, what traits are you looking for? Well, could you clone, our current superintendent? Very big compliment. The child-centered focus of this district, and when we probe and ask them, well, what does that mean? They were talking, well, they don't just care about the academics. They do, of course, but there's support for kids with special needs. Our special ed, we're proud of our special ed department, which is another unusual one that often comes up in the weaknesses area in many districts. It's very rare when special ed comes up in your strengths and inclusive practices, so that was kind of cool. This one was a real nod to all of you. The strong financial management and updated facilities, people view as one of the 8 strengths that they brought forward. And they say, we like that we're not fighting, you know? There's a positive relationship. The board feels good with the administration, vice versa, the teachers. One of the most positive teacher association interactions we had as well. And so these are great strengths you should feel really good about. Then, of course, we ask, well, what are some opportunities? We also phrased this to get people thinking, you know, what are some issues that are going to be on the new superintendent's desk when he or she starts this in a year? So we had people thinking. The biggest thing that came up was that you are a growing district, which some people put in the strengths category, and then other people put that in the challenges category, because along with it is changing demographics. And everyone we talked to tipped their hat to the work that you're doing with diversity, equity, inclusion, but there were some differences in how far you should go and how fast you should move. And so we took that input and we wrote that one of the things we think people are told us is that you don't quite have a consensus, not whether to do it, but on the best path and the best pace. Joan, I see you nodding. Is that one a surprise to hear or not at all?
Not at all.
Okay. The other thing that people feel has been a challenge is that the political divide in the country also plays out in your school community and in your school district. And people are worried that you're listening to the squeaky wheels, that the people with the loudest voices are the ones that get heard. And we were told quite a bit that we don't think those loud voices necessarily represent anywhere near the majority. And they give you credit for navigating a tough time in the country politically, but when they look at the future and we ask them what's going to be a challenge, they want you to keep alert to this fact, what I think they were telling us. Todd, jump in if there's anything.
Sure.
The growth in the community needs to be carefully planned for. So, don't forget you're going to need more resources with more kids. We were told that while the facilities are great, not all of the projects are done, and there's still some needs. And you might even need land, at some point to build another school. You don't know. So they're wanting to make sure you're being proactive with the growth, not reactive. A lot of concern about recruitment and retention of high-quality staff. They feel obviously really good about your staff. They put it on the strengths, and they just want to make sure that you're keeping them happy, that the pay's competitive, that the culture is positive, and that you're doing everything you can. They don't want to lose what they have. And they know around the country there is a growing teacher shortage out there, and they don't want it to happen to you guys. And then a lot of sentiment about getting back to the pre-pandemic status. They think you've done a really nice job of making that the message this year. They have heard that message, they like it, and I think while this was under the district opportunities, I think they were just reinforcing that they too want to get back to those levels. Don't forget that there's still social emotional issues that came with that, and being proactive. And then finally, we asked the third question, and this time there were 9 characteristics that really stood out, and then there was a drop-off. So we included 9. There was no magic number. We do it by where we think the consensus is. Visible, approachable, hands-on, engaged. They respect what your current superintendent does in that area, and they don't want to lose that. That's what they want. They want a person they can talk to who's the voice of your district. They they made it very clear that they're used to collaborative decision-making. They get very few things just from the top down. Big decisions are, they're asked to be part of and to be, have voices in, and they want your next superintendent to also be collaborative. Authentic was another word that came up a lot, and we lumped a couple of these together because they just seem to go along the same line. So honesty, integrity, it develops a trust. Basically, people were just saying, we want not only a good leader, we want a good person. This one, I think, came directly from that concern that was mentioned earlier. So they want somebody strong, decisive, able to make tough decisions, be able to explain how you came to that, and then stand by them. And sometimes you can't please everyone. You're going to have to say no sometimes. So they want collaborative, but they also want strong and decisions that can be fully explained and stood by. This next one, I thought nicely mirrored one of your strengths about being child-centered. They want your superintendent to be that way too, and be making decisions on what's in the best interest of kids. Good listener, no surprise that one would come up. But in the same realm of ideas, they also were saying, good listener, but open to new ideas and other points of view. You know, don't not only listen, but also be open to maybe changing your mind if somebody says something challenging. I thought courageous was a cool word. We heard it a lot. I think, again, because there are some challenges to all school districts right now. So they want a visionary, courageous leader who wants growth for the district. Another nice thing we heard is we don't, and your staff was maybe the biggest voices with this, we don't want to just cruise along. We want to be challenged. We want continuous growth. And growing and improving didn't seem to scare anybody. That's a real positive part of your culture. They want somebody who's warm and personable, builds positive relationships, and you got to be intelligent, thoughtful, and reflective to do all those things too. So that was very clear data that came from our conversations. Todd's now going to take you through the data that we learned just from the survey. By the way, we're not going to go through the survey page by page. We're just hitting some highlights, and you are all very capable of taking a look at that when you have a chunk of time if you haven't already.
When you look at those, there's a couple, in there.
Surveys?
Yeah, in the survey, you couldn't read what they were.
Oh, you mean the descriptions are a little short on this stuff?
Oh, we could help you out with that. And I could even...
Yeah, like for it says a number of educational, it's educational opportunities,
Yeah.
I think we have it on a hard copy anyway.
It's on,
You have a
yeah.
hard copy.
It's on the next page, is it?
I think it's on the next page it does explain, but yeah. When it's, okay. So, Todd, go ahead.
Any
These are the
questions?
highlights.
Any questions regarding anything Joe has shared so far? Just take a pause.
Okay.
So as Joe said, that was a summary of our in-person experience, and I have to say that every place I went, everybody was extremely welcoming, warm. There's a positive energy in the district. They were accommodating. We had maps and diagrams of where to go. Doors were unlocked. People were greeting us. I got to talk to some kids at the high school who were there for a basketball camp, some elementary kids. It was a feel-good day in the district. And you should know there's just a very positive vibe in the district in every one of your buildings. And that's, that as a former superintendent, that's a good measure for me of just how successful the district is when you have those kind of vibes in the buildings. It was a great day. I told
And before you think that we say that to every board, we don't.
We don't, no.
We're not able to sometimes.
No, sometimes, no. There are times we're looking for our room and we're in the basement. It's on the 3rd floor because we don't have a map or anything like that. It was well laid out, and you did a wonderful job of just welcoming us into the district. So I am going to go over the surveys, and as Joe had pointed out, the number of respondents, 1,123, a significant number for a district this size. He had pointed out another district where we had less than that, but the district was just about 5 times the size of this district. So that's a good response. And as we go through the surveys, you're going to hear some of the same themes that Joe pointed out, which is wonderful, because that's what you would expect. You would expect, like the in-person, what we're getting from people in person, the focus groups, listening sessions, we would see some reflection, that similar kind of information data from the surveys, and that's what you're going to see as we walk through this. So this particular slide shows you the number of people who responded, or the different groups, I should say. I don't need to read this, but you get a good sense of those groups who responded. Happy to see 6% of the students responded. So that tells me that there's probably, I called it a resource period, but it wasn't a resource period. It was contact time, thank you, at the high school. And so I suspect there was a time when the teacher said, hey, this is a good time for them to take the surveys, because that's a good number of students to respond to the survey.
The last district we presented this report to had only 1% students respond. So 6 times higher than the last one we did.
So district strengths, we'll start off here. I'm a biking fan, so I took this picture off your website. Happy to see that you have a cycling team here. And it does speak to one of the areas of strengths, offering opportunities for all kids. You offer opportunities for all kids. And so if there's some interest from students, then you work on finding a way to keep that interest. So I thought I would just throw that up there. So district strengths from the surveys. And again, you have the results here. I'm not going to walk through, as Joe said, but on page 4 of the results, you can see where these top 6 came from. So if you have the survey results, you could go there and see on page 4 what the top 6 areas are. And these tend to be in order of the most important areas that people felt were strengths in the district. Number 1, excellent teachers and staff. And I heard that over and over again. I heard that from parents who attended the parent session who were in fact teachers in the district, and their kids had gone through the district and they could not say enough about the staff in the district. So that resonated just about with every group, including the students. Academic achievement, definitely a strength. They felt as if there were resources in place for students to be all that they can be. There's still more opportunity there, but they feel as if the standard is set, and students feel very challenged to achieve and work towards that standard. Joe had mentioned this, district reputation, a lot of pride and a lot of respect in this district. And I can tell you that just doesn't happen overnight. Having spent 35 years in education in Wisconsin, it happens by people being aligned, by having a superintendent who's been here for a number of years, double digit, and is focused on a trajectory. So when you have people who are moving to the community for the school, things are happening, and they're happening for the right reason. Supportive community, we talked about that with the referenda that had been passed, but also supportive community in the sense that they welcome the school board and the administration into dialogue about the community. I've heard from a group that I had interviewed, they were community leaders, and just the ability for the district and district leadership to interact with those community leaders, whether it be the Rotary Chamber, police chief, fire chief, that type of thing. There's a lot of community support for the school district. Schools and facilities, definitely a strength. The kids were excited to talk about the school facilities, and so were the parents and the staff. And number 6, strength, the number of educational opportunities and programs. So this drilled down to just about everything: clubs, extracurriculars, AP classes, dual credit, dual enrollment, all of those types of things. They were very excited to have those opportunities. And kids had said, even if the opportunity wasn't available, they can engage with the counselor and they would find some way of making certain that those students could pursue that opportunity or that interest. So that is definitely a strength. Questions about the strengths? District opportunities. So on district opportunities, I like the word opportunities. Some may see it as challenges. Some may see it as what's that list, as Joe had said, when the new superintendent sits down, what are the top 10 items that are going to be on that list. And you've seen this, recruitment and retention of high quality staff. And you're not the only one that's trying to make that a priority. And I think the good things you have going on here certainly does help retain staff.
How does quality of instruction hit number 2, and excellent teacher and staff are number 1 on our positives?
I am glad, because I was going to stop Todd at the second one, because we are baffled by this one, because it didn't come up in a single focus group. Anybody questioning the quality of instruction.
Where did it come from?
It was on a survey. It was one of the options on the survey. So the survey was forced choice, and for some reason, I was going to ask you what your thoughts might be. Do you think people were saying not so much that it was a problem, but we want you to keep the focus on high expectations and quality and so on?
I would think so. It's
That's
similar to recruitment and retention. I think our staff and community recognize what we're trying to do. Our HR department's been phenomenal with this. But in working with our teaching group, the WEA, so I kind of see those the same thing. We have a strategic plan, for example, for number 3. So I'm seeing a lot of these as just things that we need to continue doing, possibly.
Yeah. Usually if there's
I think though, quality of instruction might be, kind of from the COVID, when you sit down
Sure.
and look at quality of instructions, we did a good job trying to deliver, but it wasn't like that in person, so I think, when you look at it, it's probably going back to, increasing performance and quality of instructions kind of ties into that.
good interpretation. Any other insights you guys might have? I'm confident that if this was a significant issue in any way, that it would have clearly bubbled up in the conversations with the focus groups. When we see something like that on the survey, usually we hear about it in the same way when people have a chance. Because not only did we not hear much, we didn't hear anything, not a single concern. So I kind of viewed it as saying, along the lines that I mentioned earlier, let's keep growing. Let's not ever cruise. Let's keep that a priority. I viewed it more that way.
Yeah. It's a good question, Judy. The question wasn't what's not working. Right, and if this is the list of what's not working, then it's okay, the quality instruction is significantly suffering. But if you look at the rest of the list as we go, as I walk through those are all things, many of those things are working, and they want to continue to work on it and make it even better.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what the spirit of that is.
Do you think it could be that on the survey, they're asked to kind of rate it, whereas when you interview, when it comes from themselves, they come up with, we love the curriculum and the staff, but if you have to make a choice under curriculum and staff, they tend to go one way or the other.
It could be.
I mean, you've already set them up with some choices.
Sure.
And in the other one, they came up with the idea themselves.
Open-ended versus
Yeah,
right.
We call this forced.
So once you've already called into question the quality of instruction, then they say, oh yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well, again, I don't think it was
any-
listed as problems
Yeah,
I
on the
agree.
survey.
It's
I
not.
Issues or concerns?
The words problems when we were meeting, that wasn't what we asked, and I don't think the survey, the way the questions were, is
I think that's absolutely true.
I don't think it was
What
a
are the most
problem either,
important
but I think it
issues
was
here?
more on negative side than the
Yeah.
positive.
Right.
It was
Stating
worth
it that way.
reflecting a little bit, and I was going to stop here and ask for your guidance a little bit, because we didn't have a definitive explanation. It just seemed out of whack from the other things we had heard.
Yeah. When I was interviewing staff in particular, they, of course, they would want to talk about quality instruction, and they talked about the valuable professional development that they receive here in the district and how they're all in on that development. So I see this as just an opportunity to continue to do the good work that you're doing in that area. I don't see that as reflecting that this being
If you look at
problematic.
the question, the way it's stated, it's facing the district in the next 5 years. And so it's clearly talking about a growth area
So keep this.
as opposed to necessarily a problem area, at least
Right.
from my perspective.
The groups that I had interviewed were all very astute to the fact that as you grow as a district, you want to get in front of that growth to some degree. And that means ensuring that quality instruction continues, because you're going to be adding new staff on, the onboarding process needs to be in place. So they're aware that there will be challenges as the district grows, and to make certain you do what you do best and to continue to do that. That's the spirit in which I took this. Very astute community as to what they believe is needed to continue on that trajectory of success. I'm going to continue, so strategic plan for growth enrollment, I just talked a little bit about that. They want to see a plan, and there is a plan, and a bit tighter on the plan as you move forward and project that growth in the future. Meeting the needs of an increasingly diverse student population. Again, continue to educate the community and the staff and the students on what's needed to stay on that trajectory of success and prepare for that increased enrollment. So what does that look like? Additional programs, the bilingual program that is in place this year, just thinking about how you can continue to plan for that future growth. Financial well-being of the district, that, again, I don't see that as a negative. That's just saying you're doing a good job, let's continue to do a good job. And we all know that you're in the middle of a referendum right now. You have an operational that's it's going to drop off soon, so there's some decisions that will have to be made by the board. Continue to do that good planning as you've done.
Most people, for number 5, I know from the focus groups, that they're directing that as a concern to your state, which they don't quite trust is going to make good decisions about financial support for you guys in the future. It just came up quite a bit.
Staff and administration said a lot of positive comments about the Director of Business Services. You know, in this environment, and we know just how that funding mechanism works here in Wisconsin, to have somebody who's on it and knows what's going on, pays dividends. So he received a lot of positive comments. So next, superintendent, the qualities. And so we broke this down to leadership skills and personal traits. And many of these, again, are similar to what we heard when we were in person meeting with the group. So communication skills, making certain there's good communication skills, and being able to engage and listen, and be active. And I'd like to say an active listener. Many groups mention the word engagement, and having a superintendent who's engaged. And when you're engaged, you are obviously communicating. So communication skills is critical. People team management, so being able to manage people and their demands and expectations, and also being able to manage a team. As the district grows, that's something that will certainly be on the superintendent's radar and have to be a skill set that he or she possesses. Relationship building, it's critical. Your district's in the shape that it's in because your administration and the superintendent has done a great job of building relationships in the community. And so they see that as critical to the success of the continued success of the district. Instructional leadership. Everybody would like to see that in the superintendent. You have a solid administrative team here at the district office, but they want someone who knows what instructional leadership is. And when you dig into that a little bit, they wanted someone who's been an educator. That's really what's at the bottom of that. Fiscal management, again, you know that those are areas that are going to have to pay attention to. And many said you're not going to find superintendents who know the same depth of knowledge as your director of business services, but you want someone that has the big picture of what rocks can be moved and how to move those. And cultural competence. That's something that I heard from students and staff, and that kind of aligns well with the growing and changing demographics in the district. How do we prepare for that? How do we manage that? How do we lead in that area? So somebody who has an understanding of that area. Personal traits. I love number one, integrity. That gets me excited, and it's you don't often hear that very often any longer, but your community wants a superintendent who has integrity. Child-centered, thinking about what we can do for all students, opportunities provided. Child-centered also for me, and from what I heard, was personable. Students know the individual, know them by name, don't mind coming up to them and saying, are you coming to the football game tonight? When it's child-centered, that means they're able to engage and really focus on the child and what it means to be present at those events. Commitment to the community. So I talked a little bit about the chamber, Rotary. It's being involved in the community. It's building those partnerships. I heard from different groups that if there's a need in the district for some financial support, for example, the current administration can probably pick up the phone and make a call and get that kind of support. And so it's key to have that commitment to the community, and the community therefore responds. And so they want to see somebody who can develop that level of commitment in the community.
I guess when you talk commitment to community, is that living in the community, or are we going to touch upon that later?
Yeah, that's a great question. We can touch on that. I can tell you from my my interviews with my groups, it wasn't a deal breaker. They wanted somebody who was engaged in the community and felt proud to represent Waunakee, and somebody who you would know whether they lived here or not, because they're always around.
One of your teachers summarized what I think is the majority view of the people we heard. He said that exactly where you live isn't what matters, it's the engagement and commitment. He said you could have somebody who lives in DeForest and is here for every event, every concert, every sport. You could have someone who lives 2 houses from a school and not show up and be involved, and I'd rather have the one who lives in DeForest. So I think that was very well said.
Yep.
That seems to be the, I'd say the majority opinion of at least those folks who talk.
All things being equal, if someone was, if someone is interested in moving in the community, I think that would be
I would throw that out to the board.
I agree with the commitment to the community, not the physical living in here as a make or break.
I would agree. I don't think it's a deal breaker. It would be nice, but I feel we need the best candidate, and if they're committed and engaged.
I think there's plenty of surrounding communities that are close enough. You throw out DeForest, it's a challenge maybe to get housing in Waunakee and something,
That was brought up, that affordable housing could be an issue for candidates. and
My only
housing
concern would be if it's a really long distance
Yeah.
residence separation.
A lot of people said that
And I
too.
would say if
We
it's
don't want
suburban
anyone-
Milwaukee.
Yeah, we don't want anybody 50 minutes to
I'm
an
not sure
hour.
how engaged that
Right.
person can actually be.
So if we ask how you're going to be engaged, that's more important than are you going to live here?
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Boards can't require it. I mean, it's not a correct, but you can certainly ask the engagement question. You'll get a good sense from the candidate pretty quickly.
You know what we can
And
do.
I always,
proximity issue.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it needs to be in the community, but they can't be a long commute. I mean, I don't.
You can't be engaged, visible, accessible, approachable if you're an hour away and you have a family you're trying to get home to. So
You're-
most people said as long as they were close and committed to the community, I'm okay with that.
you're gonna have a hard time calling a snow day if you're living in Kettle Moraine. And I joked with the groups that I met with, and that's true, you know, it's when I was superintendent, I wanted to move in the area because I wanted to be part of the community and understand if I have to call a snow day, I wanna look out my window and say, yeah, there's snow. But it's in this environment, how hot the housing market is and the close proximity are some other communities, I think you would want somebody who's just fully engaged.
And Todd, just one point of clarification for these, on your presentation, the leadership skills and the personal traits. This is a list of the top 6
Yes.
characteristics from the
You
survey
can-
that was given to the.
Correct.
This isn't like, okay, so.
Nope.
No,
So this is what
He's
was
still
pushed
on
out
the
to
survey
Okay.
results, and you can see all of them, but we just listed the top
Okay.
ones.
So like for the leadership skills, there were 8 options given to vote on, and so these are the top 6.
Correct.
And for the personal traits, there were however many, and these are the top 6.
Correct.
You are
Okay.
correct.
Okay, I just
You're
wanted
okay. You know, that's a
to
good
make
thing to
sure
point
I
out.
was understanding that.
Yep, and yeah, if you wanted to see the leadership skills, then page 6 is where it starts.
Okay.
Yep. And the last 3 personal traits, problem solver, and it ties back to somebody, a comment that Joe made regarding one of the strengths, characteristics was thoughtful. I heard a lot about someone who doesn't want to, they don't want somebody who's going to make a knee-jerk reaction. They want somebody who's going to problem solve, who's going to think it through, and land on a good spot that embraces as many thoughts and opinions as possible and then stick to that decision. Champion of DEI. So this is, you saw it in one of Joe's slides as well. They recognize that this is a topic and that needs to continue to be addressed, and there has to continue to be work around it. I heard there was a committee on it doing some work. Candidates that I'm speaking to see that there is an equity statement on your website, so they understand that this is an area that the next superintendent needs to be aware of and have a deep understanding of.
So when you talk about champion of DEI, we have touched upon it that there's different approaches and so forth. You know,
Yeah.
I would, you know, it seems like we are going at the right pace, you know, with our current committee.
Yeah.
You know, we've had some challenges with ad hoc committees, things like that. So I would submit that a champion doesn't mean, you know, we're going to go with an ad hoc committee that's going to make decisions for the district. And I don't know what you mean by champion.
Joan, I was going to ask you, we gave you a chance to individualize the survey, and I believe that was the language that you guys submitted.
Yeah,
So that's where it came.
and I think.
We give every district the opportunity to individualize the survey a little bit, and you guys pretty much left it alone. But I think you felt that there wasn't anything on the area of equity and such, and you submitted a couple, and we just put them in as you suggested.
So, you know, and Dawn, I think it was actually your suggestion to use that particular phrase, and, you know, I interpret it as just somebody who will, you know, continue to move that block forward.
Could use the
Not-
word leader too, I
you
mean,
could
yeah,
use-
right.
Someone who's a continuous advocate.
Right, an advocate of it, you know,
Yeah.
it's just a word. It doesn't mean we are done or ever going to be done. It's just a process.
Well, in the leadership profile, it kind of, the last one, it says culturally competent, able to work collaboratively
Right.
towards consensus on addressing diversity
Yeah.
equity. I mean, I think that's where it's spelled out.
Correct.
It's not just, we're not going to stick champion on his sweatshirt, but,
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
is what you're looking for when you bring candidates to us, and I think it's probably a positive discussion.
Well, when the candidates I've spoken with know the work that districts are doing, they are aware of the work you're doing, and I had mentioned the equity statement on your webpage. How I interpret this is that you don't want a candidate who's going to shy away from that work.
Right.
Right.
So whatever the pace is, whatever it is, and so that's my response to the people I'm speaking with. We don't want somebody who's going to shy away from it.
Right.
You're going to want somebody who continues to on the trajectory that you've started. So that's the way I interpret
Yeah.
that. Jack.
And this is a good segue because we have the data we got from the focus groups, and then this data that we got from the survey. And my most fun is doing synthesis work. So Todd and I then took and looked at both of those. What are they saying? Where is it the same? Are there any outliers? And we really carefully prepared this leadership profile as what we think your community was telling us after talking to focus groups and getting the survey results. So this is our professional synthesis of what we think everybody in your community was telling us. So let me go through them. It turned out to be 9 characteristics, but we were clever and we put a bunch in each one without it being overwhelming. It was really important for us to be reflect what we were told, but also not be so overwhelming to a candidate as to mean nothing. So the first one is a leader fully invested in Waunakee, who's approachable, visible, and engaged. A skilled decision maker who's open. Remember the hearing all points of view. Fair, politically savvy, which I think is a very positive way of dealing with the current political climate. Able to make difficult decisions, explain them clearly, and stand by them. An authentic person who displays honesty, integrity, and develops trust with others. These 3 seem to all be in the same spirit. That's why we lumped them. A skilled listener, communicator, and collaborator who's going to engage all stakeholders within the community. Child-centered leader who makes decisions centered on the best interests of the students. A relationship builder with exceptional interpersonal skills. A courageous visionary leader focused on continuous growth for the district. Intelligent, thoughtful, and reflective leader able to think strategically. And a culturally competent leader able to work collaboratively toward consensus on addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's our recommended summary for this profile. And I'll stop in a minute and just get your overall feel for this profile, but I wanted to remind you one more time why this was so important. We have candidates who have been waiting for this, who will learn so much more about your district and whether they think they're a fit by reading this whole report and looking at this profile. Hopefully you feel comfortable of posting the survey results and this report so your community can know that they were heard. What I'm really proud of that Todd and I were able to do, if you look at that leadership profile, I don't think anyone who came and shared information or completed a survey doesn't see something that was important to them in there. And we wanted them to know that we really listened. This came from them, not us. And not every leadership profile looks the same by any means. And then finally, we write and develop our interview questions based on probing these 9 characteristics. We have a rubric we use to assess the candidates, and we're going to assess them based on these 9 characteristics. When we come on the 16th and talk to you about who our recommended candidates are and to prep you for your first round of interviews, we're going to pull these out. These are the topics that you'll divvy up and write questions for. We'll create an assessment rubric for you to use during your interviews with these 9 characteristics. It just has to now remain the focus of the process, because this is how we weed out people who are just applying because the superintendency came up, from the ones who are applying because they read this and say, that's me. This is the place I want to go to. So before we do the last page on next steps, any comments, thoughts, anything you think we might have missed?
So I know you indicate on with the demographics, that because it was right in the survey, and you indicate that they may check more than one box.
Right, you could live in the district and be a staff member.
Right. Do you have any assurance that the survey was done only once?
That came up, and I checked with our survey person, and she can go back and take a look to see if there's anything coming out of multiple single sources, and I'd be happy to have her do that, just to assure yourself. But with this number, a good number like that, and everything corresponding with what we heard in the focus groups, it really doesn't appear like there was any mischief going on there.
I realize, sorry. Okay. I realize these aren't weighted or like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 list. That being said, if child-centered statement, I love the word cloud here, I really do. But for the ones that were weighted and how things were coming through in the survey, the child-centered statement, if that could be bumped up in the list, that'd be great.
We could do that.
Yeah.
We try to tell the candidates that they're not in priority order, but good candidates do read into things. And, the things at the top of lists are usually interpreted that way. And child-centered did come up in just about everything.
Right, yeah, and I think it was coming through in the surveys and in the, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
So when you and I chatted with my interview, I said, how are you going to get us another Randy?
Right.
And, this profile is Randy, just is. And so I'm elated with it. That is the person we want. I hope you guys can find this person.
We are working it right now, so we're doing our best.
You have instructional leadership in there, but where do you see that in the profile? Am I missing it? Is it under intelligent, thoughtful, and reflective, or?
I kind of see it more in the visionary.
Okay.
When educators see the word visionary, they're usually associating that with instructional leadership, or what's called a lot now, teaching and learning.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so continuous growth for the district.
Right.
That's not enrollment growth, that's growth in our practices, that's growth in programs. It's more of that, I see that as more of the instructional leadership.
Okay.
Great questions. Joan?
Before we go on to the next part, the next step, I just want to acknowledge, those maps and the day that you had in the district. That was really Rebecca's doing.
We have thanked her profusely. She treated us
Rebecca
like
made
royalty.
that day happen easily for you. And the survey results, Annie's work, Annie Blackburn, she pushed and pushed, and I just want to be sure those people get recognized for all.
We agree.
I had a quick question about, after our discussion and the presentation and listening to the feedback, I certainly understand what it means when you say politically savvy here. But I wonder if that could be taken out of context, having not had that, I think politically neutral or something along those lines, but when you say politically savvy, I don't know what kind of context that is associated with that. That stood out for me. I know what we mean by that, but that's just
I had a tiny
thought
bit
I
of
had.
angst about putting that in there. But I went back and put my superintendent hat on.
Okay.
And remember, the main audience for this
Yeah.
is going to be a superintendent. They
Right.
know what that means.
Okay. Okay.
Ready? Okay. Well, as long as we were gathered, we thought we'd give you where we're at with the process and what's coming up. So the next steps, October 13th, which is not that far away all of a sudden, is the last day to submit applications. And then we have, between the 9th and the 13th, we're going to bring in, no magic number again, but it usually ends up being 10 to 12. And we're going to look and use the leadership profile to find the people who we think are the closest matches. At this point, what was the count today?
Just under 20.
We had just under 20 with a lot of people who have given us verbal commitments, but just haven't done the physical application yet. And we doing a lot of contacting. We're scheduled, and I hope we'll be ready for you. If at any reason we're not ready, it would be better not to rush it. But we're going to try to meet that commitment so you don't have to do an extra meeting. I know that was really important for you guys. So if all goes well, the 16th, we're going to come back. It'll be a meeting. I think you have a schedule come late, like 8 o'clock. And we'll take you through our candidate recommendation slate. We'll give you all the information from the applications that night. We'll give you access via an email and code for how to get into a Dropbox that has even additional information about those candidates. So you'll be introduced to the candidates and have access to really do your homework before you start interviewing. And then the second part of that meeting on the 16th, we'll give you a couple do's and don'ts with interviewing and plunge right into helping you think about what questions you want to ask. How many questions should we prepare? How long should the interviews be? You will not leave that meeting feeling any discomfort about the next step. We're going to make sure you feel good about it. Then you've set aside November 1st and 2nd. I'm sorry.
Go on. I understand what you've said thus far about your interviewing and making your selections. I guess I have a question about, are you doing the background checks on the candidates as part of the selection process?
We will have conducted reference checks on the 6 or whatever people that we bring to you. Pretty detailed. When you then get it down to 2, we will offer the opportunity to provide an even deeper dive into social media, and everything else associated. The only thing that won't be checked is criminal background. A district has to do that.
Sure.
And these are all going to be either sitting superintendents or sitting deputy superintendents already working in districts, so you can feel pretty safe that they've passed a criminal background check in their current check. But yes, we will be doing all of that, reference checks and so on. Nothing would be worse, Mark, for us to bring you a candidate that somebody finds out something else and that's bad for us and bad for you. So we work hard to make that not happen.
Thank you.
Joan, I think you got a 1st and 2nd as a solid date for your first round of interviews, and I believe you put Halloween as
the day before.
3rd or the day before, in case you wanted to break it up into 3 rather than 2. You wanted to see how many candidates we were going to bring in. The dinner meetings and interviews are the week of the 6th through 11th, and am I right, we didn't nail down a specific for that?
We have not.
Because again, there could be 3, as many as 3 we've had, so you want to at least see what happens with that first round, but at least you have the week plotted out. And then we're still in line for you to have some time to make your decision, and either a meeting in late November or early December, you can introduce the new candidate to your community. And what's beautiful about the timeline that we all agreed to early on is you'll have the entire second semester to plan appropriate transition activities between your new superintendent and Randy. And I know Randy will be an absolute class act as far as welcoming the new person and, calling him or her up, hey, this is happening in March. If you can come to this, it would be good for you to see, it'll be that kind of stuff. So hopefully, when July 1st comes around, there's been a really wonderful, solid transition.
So we don't have any date to really pick one yet, do we?
No.
Do you want to shoot something so we keep our calendar clean?
Do you mean after the interviews to
Yeah.
meet and just make the decision?
The actual decision-making,
Sure.
we should have something on the
So
calendar.
something that following week, the 13th.
We have it as the 13th through the 17th on the timeline.
Yeah, so that's when you're going to make a decision, right?
That would be, you've
board.
already
We
conducted
make-
2 rounds, you have everything you need, and now it's time to decide. Yeah.
We have a board meeting on that 13th. Would we do something there?
We
closed
could
session?
start earlier on the 13th. That would maybe help. Could we kind of block out to start by 5:30 on the 13th?
5:30?
Can you have that discussion?
How much time do you
Um,
envision that we need for that piece? Because this far advanced too, you could also look at not only starting early, but possibly modifying the agenda to make sure we can get that piece done.
Yeah, because we could, maybe do our regular closed session after our board meeting. And so we could, if we needed to, take that whole hour and a half up to 7 o'clock.
Something to that sort.
We could do the majority of it. I mean, typically, we would have any contract or
Oh,
hiring that we would
right,
need to
we would
do
have to do
before
that.
the meeting, but you certainly could adjust other topics to at the end.
Yeah. Do you feel that an hour and a half is adequate time for us to discuss
There's
that?
no way of knowing.
If you don't
Sometimes
know.
there's a real quick consensus, and sometimes there's
And if we
a
can't
split.
come to consensus, we aren't locked to that
Right.
time. We just schedule it.
Have another one.
Yeah. I think we start at that point and see where the discussion lands.
You've given yourself a lot of cushion there to have
Yeah.
additional meetings if needed.
So you're saying maybe we start the 13th meeting at 5,
At 5:30.
5:30?
5:30, and our regular meeting starts at 7, and we'll get the contractual things done and however far we can get with this discussion.
On the actual days of the interviews, do we have recap time after the interview? So after each interview, do we talk as a board in a closed session about that candidate and compare notes right then and there?
Most
Or-
boards do.
Okay.
You can set it up any way.
So you could actually start the consensus building after the interviews, but other boards often don't want to decide for sure on the day of the interview, and they want it to sit and percolate a little bit. But yeah, you could build in X number of minutes between the interviews just to debrief a little
Yeah.
bit.
And the whole interview is closed, so we're there at that department's possible.
I'm just used to doing a recap, and then after the second interview, we say, okay, A or B, and then you go to B or C, and it's, so you're never really considering more than 2 candidates at a time versus thinking back to all 3 or all 4 or all 5. So you have your top 1 and 2 as you go through the slate, and then by the time you get to the end, you still have your top 1 or 2, and it's just discussing whatever that last interview was.
Perhaps that's a conversation we have on the 16th, when we meet in closed session, and you
Yeah.
see what candidate pool looks like, you're getting a
Yeah.
feel, then you can decide how to
Right.
approach it.
Yeah. And how much time we want with each candidate and time between.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any final questions or comments for us? We are feeling really good about this, and we hope you are too at this point. But it's all about who we bring you. I mean, all the other parts of the process are fun and all, but how well we did our jobs is based on how good you feel about the people that we bring you. So, ball's in our court.
So I guess we've asked you this before, but, you know, all of the placements that you've had, what is the average duration that they've stayed in the position? You know,
Our firm has,
on average.
our
you know.
firm has a very, very good track record. Over 98% of our candidates make it through their first contract. In fact, in the last 20 years, we've only had one person who didn't make it through their initial contract. And that's
Two-year contract.
Yeah, and that's because a spouse got transferred and ruined our whole, our whole reputation there.
But
and
if you
then-
look at it from a 5-year standpoint,
I was just about to say, 95% get offered their second contract. So they
That's
made
4
it
years.
through their initial, and then they get asked for their second. So we do a really nice job with that. And I think it's because we put so much time into the front end with the profile and keeping it all about that. There's no surprises by the end. I hope our, I was going to say something, but I hope our record will continue in this tougher, more challenging time in our country now, because the boards we've come and talked to in the last year have been more and more split and more fighting amongst each other. And when a superintendent comes in on a 5-2 vote, rather than a 7-0, it's kind of a challenge before they even start. So the split amongst boards is making superintendent tenure not what it used to be. Do you know what the national average is right now, Jack? 3.5 years.
Oh,
is
really?
How long a superintendent stays nationally. That's nothing to be proud of.
Well, I want to thank you for all the data and all the work you've done. It's outstanding.
Thanks.
And I think you have, set us up for a really good position. And, I'm excited to know that you already have 20
Yeah, it's a right.
candidates.
20 was what we were shooting for, so anything else in the last week, which a lot usually come in the last week as people have time to finish things up, so that'll be good. And are you guys comfortable posting these two reports, the survey
I feel
report and ours
they're
on your
wonderful.
website?
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people are really eager to see
They are eager.
that we listened. And that you listened. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you on the 16th, unless you hear otherwise.
So,
Enjoyable.
I would like a motion to adjourn, and then don't forget, we need to get that picture. Before.
Second.
All
What's
in
your
favor,
picture?
say aye.
Aye.
Just of us.
Just for the website?
Just National School Board week, next week, and
We just all really like you.
I was gonna say.
It's our senior
Katie's
picture.
favorite thing.
My favorite thing.
So let's find out.